What I'm about to say is based on the events of a true story in the family tree. So anyway, this person has gone about drink driving. And you would think that if this person is so intoxicated that they're endangering other people's lives, you might be justified in feeling they deserve to go to jail for endangering other people's lives. They deserve to be punished, to lose their license, etc. Now, intoxicating yourself and driving on the road as a drunk driver under the influence is clearly not a sociable, acceptable behavior, and it is definitely not something that I myself would encourage or, things like that. But if you wanted to be on good terms with such a person, you might think to yourself, oh, I'm justified in hating that person. I'm justified in feeling outraged by this person. But if you were in a romantic relationship with this person, or you were in some type of family relationship with this person and you wanted to be on good terms with them, how do you go about interacting with this person without judging them, without succumbing to outrage? There is something out there called the fundamental attribution error, and a lot of people fall for this without really realizing that we're falling for this. The fundamental attribution error is basically this. If you were to be cut off by someone, maybe an intoxicated driver, and you see that person intoxicated, cutting you off, speeding past you, you would probably feel, what an asshole, what a jerk for overtaking me in such an outrageous manner. But the fundamental attribution error is this, right? It's where that's how you feel towards them. But what if you switch places? What if you are the one who's cutting people off, intoxicated or not? You're the one cutting through traffic, speeding. Are you an asshole? In your own mind, you have a good reason for what you're doing. Now, this is what the fundamental attribution error looks like, where you basically look at other people and you attack them, you judge them. But when it comes to you, you don't attack yourself. You have a good reason for what you do. There are justifications, maybe even excuses. And so, if you're able to put yourself in the other person's shoes and not judge them, if you're able to put yourself in the other person's shoes and assume fault not with their character, but instead with the environment or with the systems that encapsulate that person. So there are certain people I know who will feel justified in feeling angry towards a distant relative because of their intoxicated behavior. They're going to attribute fault with that person's character. They're saying, fundamentally, deep down, this woman actually is a heavy drinker because that's who she is. She is inherently a bad person. She is inherently someone who likes alcohol. She's inherently someone who likes to abuse alcohol. She just likes being bad. She likes putting other people in danger. She just inherently is a bad person. This is what the fundamental attribution error is. You're assuming fault with someone's character. And you realize that this is actually going to destroy your relationship with that person. If you know someone like this, it doesn't have to be alcohol or drink driving. It could be literally any type of thing. If you assume fault with that person's character, you're literally destroying the relationship. You're literally making them feel threatened. You're destroying safety. What is safety even? It's the absence of threat. And so if this person that you are thinking about is a romantic interest of yours, or perhaps just a close family member who you'd like to be on better terms with, then you need to eliminate your own FAE bias. Stop assuming fault with their character as some type of inherent fault with them, and instead look at the ecosystem that surrounds that person. For example, the specific relative that I don't really meet up a lot personally, but the specific relative I'm thinking of, the reason I imagine that they have been heavily drinking isn't because they are inherently a bad person, but rather the reason they go drinking is because deep down they probably feel like shit. Deep down they're beating themselves up. In fact, they're probably suffocating in romanticized escapism. You're probably, if you're even through this far of the video, you might be thinking, what the fuck is romanticized escapism? You do this yourself. You romanticize escapism, like you engulf yourself in that yourself. you will do this, maybe not in the form of drink driving, maybe not in the form of alcoholism or alcohol abuse, maybe not in the form of cigarettes maybe. You might do this in there's all kinds of ways romanticized escapism functions, such as overworking, overthinking, shutting down, hanging out with friends way too often. Like, there's just all kinds of things. Dwelling in music all day long, basically kind of running away from pain, essentially, and falling in love. Basically, romanticized escapism is the tendency to fall in love with your own suffering. That's what it is. And so you become comfortable in your own suffering. You are familiar in your own suffering. And then to actually escape from that romanticized escapism is actually more painful than dwelling in that painful realm. And so it's such a bad cycle. That's what it is. It's a cycle where you will literally kind of self-abuse yourself in this cycle, whether it's overworking, alcohol abuse, or whatever. You're in this cycle where you're beating yourself up. And this relative that I'm thinking of course, there are reasons as to why she may be beating herself up, but that's what it fundamentally is. Deep down, this person probably feels in their heart that they're suffering. And they're expressing their suffering through some type of external medicine, you could say. They're trying to numb that pain significantly. And they're numbing that pain significantly because they don't know what else to do. Indeed, they could be accountable and try to take some type of action that is productive. And that's a very logical approach and very easy thing to say. But you yourself probably, as I said, do likely engage in some type of romanticized escapism yourself. And do you know how easy it is to just fall out of that cycle? Basically remove yourself from a bad habit and enter into a good one. Do you know how easy that is? For most people, including myself, it's fairly challenging. Or it can be, at least. There is actually a famous quote by Seneca. We suffer more in our imagination than we do in reality. And this is actually why we have a lot of suffering as well. We suffer in our own imaginations. Our hearts are dwelling within our own suffering, and that's where a lot of the suffering comes from. So in the end, if you want to get on with someone, if you want to be on good terms with them, especially if it's a romantic interest, you need to kill your fundamental attribution error. You need to look through a completely different lens and examine the causes as to why someone would be dwelling in a state of romanticized escapism. I'm just sort of throwing that term out there at the moment because I can't think of anything else to say. The tendency to fall in love with one's own suffering. And don't just look at the causes. Figure out why those causes came about in the first place. And be careful not to throw yourself in the fire pit or in the ring per se and get yourself burnt. Being empathetic isn't about disrespecting yourself. It's not about justifying negligible behavior or threatening behavior or verbal abuse or things like this. Toxic behavior. It's not about justifying it. It's not about dismissing it. It's not about letting it go per se. It's about understanding the root causes as to why it comes about. It's about doing something on your end to help mitigate and perhaps change the trajectory of that cycle. If you believe, let's say your romantic interest is toxic, and you fundamentally believe deep down that they're just a toxic narcissist, then that's all you're ever going to see and that's all you're ever going to get because you don't actually believe in that person. Now, how would you feel if someone looked at you that way? Someone that you care deeply about thought of you as a toxic narcissist. That's how they felt about you. You care about this person, but they look at you like you're a narcissist. How would you feel about that? You don't want them to look at you that way. You would want someone you care about deeply to believe in you, to understand where you're coming from on a deep emotional level, and to let you be, to let you express yourself, even if you yourself are toxic. You would like to let your frustrations be known without the fear of repercussions. Link in bio if you'd like to have a one-on-one discussion with me and change the trajectory of your romantic life.